Hey, Seka, I have a quandary for you.
Dude, who the fuck says quandary?
Well, across the pond we do say things like this, but the question I have for you, sir, is what do I do with my prototypes?
Like, the prototypes you get out of the bosses? Wait, you can actually get those to drop?
Yes, for some reason I have every type of one every single week, and I've gotten 5 of them every week. It's incredible. Honestly, I don't know why people bother being excited about it.
I hate you.
Well, I'm not sure which ones I want to use, or should I save them? I'm really not sure.
Well, for the tryhards that are super lucky like you, I guess I'll help you, and I'll make a video. Yo, what's going on, guys? Sekapoko here, bringing you another Genshin Impact video. For this video, we're going to be going over prototypes, and if you should use them or save them based on what you can really get out of them. So let's go ahead and jump into it. All right. So this question came up randomly, and I just like, because on my weekly runs, I ended up getting an extra prototype, and I was like, well, I actually got some cool stuff. I'm really excited, so I don't know what to do. And we asked Twitch chat, what do you want to talk about for this? So I ended up getting another prototype for a Claymore, and I actually got into a bit of a quandary myself, where I was like, well, do I use this? Do I use it for a wipe line? Do I use it for, what do I use it for in general? And what I was thinking about was like, well, the only thing I really get out of this is refinements. And we're going to talk about refinements for each of the weapons in the game and all the craftable weapons. So we can talk about if they are worth it or not really worth it at all. And the first thing we're going to go over is the Claymores, because I know a lot of you guys have Claymores and you want to talk about Claymores. So between any of the Claymores in the game, there is, of course, the most recent one, which is the Snow Tomb Star Silver. Then we, of course, have the prototype Archaic, which is the most common, and finally we have the wipe line. To the Snow Tomb Star Silver for the most recent weapon that we just got, the Snow Tomb Star Silver is going to give you an increased chance of proccing, up to 100% chance. So if they have that cryo element that they had, it changes the damage from an 80% damage hit all the way up to a 200% damage hit on maximum. And if you refine this, it goes up by 15% at the low end and 200% going up to 240 on the high end. So at maximum, this weapon, I believe, caps out at the maximum. It's going to be 140% on the low end, 360% on the high, which means every 10 seconds per refine, you're getting yourself an extra 40% attack damage at maximum. Now, the way that kind of rolls out is if you look at any character's talents for like a Claymore character, they're going to start at usually over 100% attack at the rank the first attack, which means that you're getting about 4/10 of an attack every 10 seconds per refine, which to me that seems kind of sus. Now, conversely, if you are going to refine the prototype Archaic, it starts at 240%. It'll maximum start at 240%, going up to 540% at maximum, which is an extra 60% attack per level. Now, again, if we're comparing it to any character in the game that is a Claymore user, that means that you're getting probably about 6/10 of a normal attack in increase in damage per refine instead of 10 seconds now, every 15 seconds. So if we're comparing the two weapons, between the two, per second, you get, for a damage per second ability, you get about the same amount of DPS increase between something that happens a 40% damage every increase versus a 60% damage right there. Between the two, though, that's why I would choose the Archaic. But overall, I would actually just save the prototypes, because 6/10 of a damage of a hit every 15 seconds is kind of lame for refinement. I mean, the amount of times you get a refinement is pretty weak, so I don't even know if I would use it. The last weapon that you can make, of course, is going to be the wipe blind. And the wipe blind, I believe, starts out, gives you an extra 6% damage for 6 seconds, a max of 4 stacks, whenever you land a normal and charge attack, but has a defense modifier. This is a very, very big weapon that people are using on Noelle in order to increase their overall damage. Now, this weapon in particular gives you a 1.5% increase in damage for every refine that you get on the weapon. At max refine on the wipe line, that means you're getting an extra 12%, goes up 1.5% for attack percentage and defense per refine. And maximum, of course, is at 12%, which at max stacks, you go from a 6% all the way up to a 12%. So you do get a double increase as far as this goes. And the reason this could be a really good option for refines is because of the way certain characters work. But the only character that's really going to take maximal effectiveness of this is going to be Noelle. And the reason this could be a really good weapon to refine for Noelle is because of Noelle's Constellation 6. Now, with Sweeping Time, you can actually increase Noelle's attack by an additional 50% of her defense because you're getting an extra defense modifier on top of this. Refining this weapon can increase your DPS overall pretty heavily when you're using your ultimate at C6 Noelle. But if you're not using a Constellation 6 Noelle, I find this to be not really the best refinement to go with for any particular character unless you're using a DPS variety Noelle. So for most players in the game, my recommendation for any of the Claymore prototypes, I would say you probably should save these because potentially we could get another character, another weapon in the game, another craftable coming in either 1.4 or what beyond in order to get yourself a bigger bump. The amount of rarity that these prototypes do have is really, really big, and getting refines on these weapons may not be your best course of action unless you're building one of those characters out in this fashion that I've just labeled out. Now, what's really interesting after we go over the wipeline is that we're going into the prototype ranker, which actually has a higher base attack modifier than the wipeline. But because it does have a higher base attack modifier, the refinements in this weapon actually are not as good because what happens is you start from instead of a 6%, that's getting a 1.5% increase over time versus only a 4% damage increase for attack and defense. Now, for this weapon, for high refines, you do get an increase in your overall damage for your kit because of the higher base attack, but the increase in damage is still be a 1% damage increase. And there's very few characters in the game that both rely on attack and defense for their overall kit. The only characters that can really rely on a prototype Rancor and get good refinements on a prototype Rancor are the characters like Kaching and Kaya. Those are the only two that we really saw that really came into play that were the big proponents that can increase their damage by using a fizz damage build for this. And of course there's Jean, but there's a reason I don't want to go over Jean because it's a fizz damage weapon, and there's other things for Jean. But overall, this weapon is an option that you could use for free to play, and refining this weapon could be good for your main DPS, but there are better weapons, and I really don't think refining this weapon is your best way to go. Going into the Iron Sting. Now, with the release of the new weapon for that just came to the game, which is called the the Festering Desire, which increases your overall elemental skill damage by 32% and give your elemental crit rate by 12%. The Iron Sting will have the same amount of base attack at maximum versus the Festering Desire. Now, the thing with the Iron Sting is the Iron Sting will provide more damage for a character like Bennett than any other weapon in the game for a 4-star weapon. And the reason it will provide more damage is because the way you're using your E a lot of the times will be an elemental reaction that will be going for a melt. And because the elemental reaction is a melt, of course, you will have elemental mastery as a maintenance weapon. It will improve the melt proc damage on your elemental mastery. Now, many people, of course, are using Bennett with Chungyang. So if you are using this with Chungyang, you can, of course, get the proc on the weapon, get refines on this weapon to give your increase in overall damage by 1.5% per refine, which gives you a total of 3% damage increase per refine. Now, I don't find that refining this weapon could be a huge damage increase for Bennett because the new weapon for the Festering Desire increases your damage even further because it increases the amount of ultimates that you can get and gives you a very similar value in overall damage versus the Iron Sting. Unfortunately, this weapon is not very good for any other character in the game besides Bennett, and it doesn't really give you enough value, so I really wouldn't recommend refining this weapon either, because the Festering Desire is just a better weapon overall for him. Now, if you are using the Festering Desire for another character like a Budada, and you're trying to use that specifically, then yeah, go for the Iron Sting, refine the Iron Sting for your Bennett. If you just want to do main DPS reaction build Bennett with Chungyang Bennett, it's a good refine, go for it. Next up, we have catalysts. We have the prototype Amber, which was the prototype Malice, I think, before. Trash, even for Barbara trash. Right? It used to be good for more healing, but I mean, getting energy gains on this is cool, but like it's on using an elemental burst. How often do you ulti on Barbara? So yeah, the fact that it's based on ultis is kind of whack. So it really sucks. Refines on this suck. Yeah, don't do it. Horrible. Then we got then we have the Mappa Mare. Now the Mappa Mare is an interesting weapon. The Wobbleware is very, very similar to the White Blend, where triggering elemental reaction creates an 8% damage bonus for 10 seconds, max of 2 stacks. So if a character like Sucrose, this is a great weapon because it has a high amount of elements, it has a low amount of elements, but a high amount of day stack, and can give you a large amount of damage if you're using a main DPS Sucrose. But the Sacrificial Fragments is a way better weapon for Sucrose for most players. We're talking 95 to 99% of players. So if you get a Sacrificial Fragments, yes, it's better. And of course, we have the Frostbearer. This one is going to be very similar to the way that the Snow Tomb Star Silver works. I don't really find this to be a good weapon overall. I'm not really a fan of this weapon, and I believe this is physical damage too, so that's really bad to refine for a Catalyst-based character. All right, next up we got bows. Now, the Compound Bow is the weapon of choice for main DPS official if you can't get a fucking rust. And if you somehow just have a lot of prototypes lying around for bows and you're like, yeah, I want to go all in my main DPS official, this is really your only option. You just can't get a rust to save your life. And a lot of free-to-play players have to go with this weapon of choice. It's really good for refinements because the way this weapon works is it actually has since it's the low base attack weapon, refinements on this weapon do really well because you get the most amount out of it. Now, if you don't know this about weapons that have low base attack have higher percentages on the main stat and also usually have a better refinement or a better ability or better increases for refinements at the bottom stat. So since it has the low base attack weapon, refining on a Compound Bow can give you a lot more value than you can for other weapons because of that. Now, if you do have a rust and you're going for an R2 rust at any point and you're not free to play and you've spent a little bit of money on the game, but you have an R2 rust or above, that's going to be better than any Compound Bow that you're ever going to get. So unfortunately, that's just the way it rolls out for main DPS official. For every other character in the game, the Compound Bow for archers is really trash panda. It's only good for main DPS official, really not good for many other characters at all. Next one up, because a lot of people are going to be talking about Gnunu, is going to be the Prototype Crescent. I'm going to tell you this. Now, my thought process on the Prototype Crescent with my level 9 auto normal attack Amber, main DPS Amber, the Sharpshooter's Oath is better for Amber. The Prototype Crescent can do more damage for Ganyu. However, the reason I bring up Amber is because Amber is a character that relies on headshots. And by playing this game since launch with Amber, I do not recommend anyone to level up the Prototype Crescent because headshots are a bitch. Not just to hit, but because a lot of enemies in the game don't have heads. They don't have weak points. They don't have areas that allow you to get that weak point damage. Case in point, the Child boss fight does not have that. If you're fighting against Child, he does not have a head. Try it. It's insanely weird. What's really interesting is that if you're going to be building a weapon for your Ganyu, the Black Cliff Warbow, way better option. It's going to boost your overall damage in a much more positive fashion than the Prototype Crescent. Refinements on the Prototype Crescent, by the way, I do have one on this account because we were testing it early on in the game, and it does less damage, by the way, at every single refine for Amber than the Sharpshooter Oath. We actually did damage calculations on this, and it does less damage than the 3-star weapon. You get an extra 9% attack on each refine, and that may seem like a lot, but it's actually not. If you really do not want to buy the Blackcliff Warbow, or you don't have another option for Warbows, you can refine a Prototype Crescent. I find it to be a very poor option though, because the amount of times you're going to do increased damage is less than half the time. So if you want your damage to be increased by more than any other weapon in the game, less than half the time, it's a good option. Now, the weapon, however, that is not a trap is the Crescent Pike. The Crescent Pike is the best possible weapon for refinements in the entire game. The 5% damage on normal attacks and charge attacks is huge and can give you a huge surge in damage. So yes, it is worth building for both Zhangling and Zhongli support damage. But if you're doing this for Zhao, probably not the best option because he is not a fizz damage carry. For most of the time you'll be using him, he does use a lot of animo. So if that's the case, is another weapon better? Well, if you're using the prototype Star Glitter, the prototype Star Glitter, after using an elemental skill, increases normal and charge attack damage by 8%. Unfortunately, I don't know if plunge attacks are part of normal and charge attack damage. I actually have no idea. I've never attempted it and I've never tested it. I have no clue if plunge attacks are included in this value. I'm assuming no. And Zhao is a big plunger. So I'm assuming this weapon does not help him. So I would assume my thought process is the prototype Crescent is a much better weapon for only main DPS characters that are going to be using the Crescent Pike, and it's the best craftable weapon. So my personal opinion is for most of the weapons in the game for prototypes, you probably should be saving your prototypes. By the way, Dragonspine Beer, you should use Crescent Pike. It's OP. For all the prototypes in the game, I really don't find there's going to be a lot of weapons that you can really use right now that can improve your damage. And what I've seen from them adding in the Dragonspine weapons, in 1.4, potentially we could get weapons that are going to be really, really powerful. We're probably not going to get anything in 1.3, but in 1.4, since we're getting a brand new area and a whole new region, there could be a whole new area that allows us to get us more prototype weapons, more cool stuff, and we can get a lot more fun things. So if you haven't used your prototypes already, these are what you really get out of refining your prototype weapons. This is what you can get for using your prototypes to refine them. I personally think for a lot of the weapons in the game, you don't get enough out of the value for these weapons unless you're going to be using them for main DPS. And even then, the increase in damage is super minor for a lot of characters. So personally, what I'm going to be doing for my account is I will be saving my prototypes for a different version of the game so that I can make sure that I get a bigger value when using my prototypes on my free-to-play account, and because I don't really get too much out of refining my weapons with prototypes, you know, unless it's the Crescent Pike, and unless that's OP, you know. All right, guys. Well, my name is Sekapoko. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys enjoyed the video, Twitch says bye. Have a great rest of the day, guys. Like, subscribe.